Democrat Congressman Jim Himes.
There's an immense amount of anxiety in Fairfield County, Connecticut. My congressional district, of course, is in southwestern Connecticut. There is a political boundary between Connecticut and New York, but there's no epidemiological boundary between New York and Connecticut. And as a result, my region has seen hundreds of deaths, and we're a relatively small state, so that means that everybody knows someone who has died. Our hospitals are overwhelmed, and of course our businesses are all closed. So there's absolutely nothing positive about this. If there is a silver lining here, it is that we are starting to see some plateau, at least in the state of New York. And of course, we're sort of a small community on the edge of New York, and that gives us some hope that perhaps we may start to see at least a reduction of the number of cases in our area soon.
And would you be keen to see when it comes to moving out of lockdown and the general public acceptance of the measures? We've seen quite vigorous protests and rhetoric around the idea of locking people down. It's an un-American thing, we're told. What are you hearing from your people about that?
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate. I happen to represent a well-educated, cosmopolitan, maybe even international constituency. And as a consequence, people, I think, are thinking fairly rationally about this, and they understand that there's a reason why we're beginning to see a decrease in in what previously was sort of a spinning out of control of this virus, and that's because we're doing the right things. We're staying in our homes, we're washing our hands ferociously, and doing the right things.
When we see the idea of jobs being linked to fighting the virus, as we did when the president starts outlining his latest immigration moves and so on, you see there a political use, thinking also of the presidential election, a political use of the crisis that everyone finds themselves in, and possibly having to do the same thing yourself. You're going to have to start saying rude things about the way that certain things have been done. You're going to have to start using the virus to attack in a political way. Are you going to be uncomfortable to do that, or will you do that?
Well, I'm not sure that I'll necessarily need to do that. And you're absolutely right. It's been very hard as the opposition party to criticize the president at a moment in time when A, the president deserves a great deal of criticism, but B, when, my constituents are dying. They don't want to hear what they might perceive to be partisan bickering in that moment. But I will say this. This president was impeached. And he was impeached because he used a public good for a personal purpose. He cut off Ukrainian aid in order to assist his reelection. The truth is that's an abstraction for pretty much every American, and it has to do with the rule of law and our constitutional order. Those are terribly important things, but they're also abstract things. But when grandma is in the ICU and we don't know whether grandma is going to survive or not, there's nothing abstract about that. And so my theory is that from a political standpoint, the way the president has failed to respond in a competent or in any way that resembles any understanding of leadership is likely to hurt him, because the pain inflicted by this virus is not abstract. Americans are going to feel the pain, not just of the coronavirus, but of the failure to respond to it in a competent way.
Well, that's Jim Himes of the 4th Congressional District in Connecticut, as you heard there, on the borders, of course, of New York State, talking a bit about the politics and the weaponization, I suppose, of the virus as America moves towards, of course, a presidential election later today. This is News.